on COVID updates, but also on the latest on COVID. They also always make sure that they have someone, a sign language interpreter, and that's in a way is a step in the right direction. But and also we have had messages that are targeting children on specifically on COVID-19. I've seen posters done by institutions such as UNICEF. I've seen animated video done by Save the Children Malawi. So there have been indeed efforts that have been done to target children with the right kind of information. But this is not, when we talk of media, sometimes we tend to focus more on the mainstream media. But I think when we look at the media, just now I was mentioning UNICEF, I was mentioning Save the Children, it really goes beyond the mainstream media when we talk of the media. So we've seen child
I think we've lost Malik.
Yeah, we have, but I don't know if I can respond to also question 2. No, this is actually to presenters. It doesn't apply to them. I don't know if there are any additions to how we can take care of it. We will go to Munda. Anyone from Plan Save the Children and additions?
Through the media, because the media is basically what connects people. There can never be any advocacy without the involvement of the media. When UNICEF launched the International Children's Day of Broadcasting, a lot of things have been done to ensure that children get to the airwaves to do radio and television activities, which can be news or programs. And having at this day, we are going to basically talk about how we can enhance the implementation of such activities.
Henry, is it possible to get a better background?
Hello?
Is it possible for you to get a better background? Hello? That one has a lot of light and it is disturbing our eye.
Ah, okay. All right, apologies. Maybe just 1 minute.
Okay, so whilst Henry is
okay, is that okay?
In a better position, my apologies. I got cut off. I think it was due to power outage. I'm back now. Thank you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so basically look at the role of the media in advancing children's rights in Africa during COVID-19. Some of the things the media did, like in Zambia, were to broadcast lessons to learners after schools were closed. So we need to hear from other countries on how such things were implemented. So to help me discuss, we are going to engage the same children that have been part of us, and we have Mundia herself who will be responding to some of the questions. Then we have Arethra Banda from Malawi, who's 12 years old, to join us. Then we have Stacey Achen, 12 years old, from Uganda. And we also have Joshua Muraya, 14 years old, from Uganda. Then we'll be joined by Sylvia Nankia from the Uganda Editors Guild. Thank you so much for joining us. Then we have Sarah Kimani, South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Eastern Africa correspondent. Thank you for joining us. Then we have Roleta Mateka, founder and editor of Newsday newspaper in Lesotho. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. So just to kickstart the discussion, I'll ask about the role of the media in advancing children's rights in Africa. Let me begin with you, Sylvia. What are your reflections on the role of the media in advancing children's rights in Africa? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Henry. We last met in March around this time in Uganda, and thank God you are not locked down here, because that's the very time you left the country to go back home. It's exciting to see you.
Good to see you.
Yes. Back to the role of the media. And when I looked at this, I looked at myself. I said, okay, what is my role? Because before I became a journalist, I was a human being. And what is my role as a human being to ensure that I advance children's rights? Because what we do as individuals mainly crosses into the media, and it reflects in what we write, what we broadcast, what we air on our TV stations. We have a duty to protect the rights of children. We have a duty to give them a voice. We have a duty to inform our communities about what rights these children have, about the laws that are prescribed in our Constitution, in the Children's Acts, in those international instruments. If we do not bring them home for our people to understand what is provided for, that's why you see the African child is treated different from the child elsewhere. The story of the African child is totally, totally different. And before I blame it on the media, I'll blame it on us as individuals, but also as a media fraternity. We have a duty to ensure that we protect children from harmful content. But I don't see ourselves doing it deliberately to see that whatever we are broadcasting doesn't have that kind of language that puts the child at the back of our minds as we write. What would a child be interested in knowing as we produce our content? Do we think about it? So our role, first of all, is to ensure that children are part of our programming. Children are part of what we do. They are part of what we write. Malik talked about having them as sources. Yes, why should I write a story about a child without the child in it? Many of the children today speak out. When I was growing up, we used not to speak because we were taught not to speak. We were not given that voice. But children today have been given that voice. And the media is kind of suffocating the voice because we are not bringing this voice out. So it's a challenge for us to ensure that we play that part and ensure that the children's voice comes out, and whatever we broadcast is for, and whatever is about the children should also have children involved. Whatever we do as adults affects the children. Whatever policies we have in our countries affects the children, but there's little input by the children. So if we amplify their voices, maybe even the policymakers will know that children's voices matter. So giving children a voice is one of the key things that we have to do as the media.
So much for that input. Of course, we need to ensure that children are engaged, they're able to communicate according to their evolving capacities. Thank you so much. So now, Sarah, you are a correspondent for SABC in Eastern Africa, and could you give us examples of how possibly you have used the media to advance the rights of children during COVID-19? Well, the story is about adults, or you managed to cover COVID-19 from a child rights perspective. Thank you.
Good afternoon. One of the things that we noted from the onset is that children were really affected by the pandemic, whether here in Kenya or in the other parts of the country, of the region that we cover. The one that we saw mostly was the inequality. For example, we noticed that children from rural areas areas were not receiving education, especially because now schools closed for 9 months, and so everything went virtual. So we did a lot of stories around that, and creative and proactive, introducing radio lessons, introducing broadcast lessons. Even sometimes the Minister of Education, what we call the Cabinet Secretary here, have children assemble under trees to be able to continue with their studies with the teachers that may be in the locality. I'm sure that would not have happened if myself and other journalists here in the country would not have highlighted that one. Another thing that I concentrated on, and I saw people, whether here in the local media or even international media, pick up, and I could tell that they had picked up from stories that I had done. I was reporting on the issues of early marriages that became very many and rampant, pregnancies, and even drops, young girls dropping out of school, especially in communities that practice female circumcision, in communities that really don't value education. So from the word go, I used both the mainstream media, but I also took advantage of social media, so that every time I was out on assignment, I would either tweet a story before it even goes on air, and sometimes I would see either specialists, education specialists coming to my inbox to say, I want to give you an input on that, and, suggest ways that government can do, or sometimes even government officials reaching out and asking, where exactly did you get that story? What do you think we can do? Do you think we should send our representatives there? So there has been a lot of work that we have done, but I think this was also a wake-up call for us as journalists across the world, because what we have done previously is, in cases like this, when schools closed, we all went with the story of schools have closed, government have closed schools, but none of us asked ourselves, what happens to the children? I have a 12-year-old daughter, an only child, and I saw what she went through during that closure of schools. For us, the story was schools are closed, children are safe. In places where they were not abused, because I understand in most stories we did, we realized that homes became centers of abuse. There are other issues that schools provide. They provide, a place for children to socialize. They provide a place for even some children to eat that one meal. And those are stories that never came. They would have come if we moved away from our high pedestal as adults and spoke to the children when they're playing soccer outside and asked them, the government is saying you should actually be at home. How come you're still coming out to play? Are you not scared of COVID? Because sometimes we assume that they don't have a voice, but they too, when you sit down and talk to them, for example, my daughter would say, we've closed school for too long. Why don't we go back to school? Because that's where my friends are. That's why I find, camaraderie. Even if I stay with you in the house and I'm safe, I feel that it would have been better to be out, interacting with children. And I realized over time that there are stories that are not coming out. School as a safe haven, school as a place not just to learn, but also as a space where children interact and socialize with their peers.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that input. It's well appreciated. Of course, like we had a debate in Zambia about reopening of schools. Some people are saying if they remain in the compounds, they'll be mixing, but if they go into class, they'll be controlled. I think those issues were quite rampant. And if you look at the rural and urban dimensions, you find that the messaging didn't consider, those differences. So let me come to you, Loretta. As a founder and editor of the newspaper, what kind of stories on COVID-19 stood out for you, and what kind of lessons can we pick from that as the rest of the media? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Lirato.
Relato, apologies. I realized that there was something wrong with what I said. Apologies for that.
It's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
First of all, I as an editor, I did not receive a lot of child-centered stories during this COVID era. The only stories that I came across were, like Sarah has mentioned, schools were closed, and that is where the focus was placed. No journalist took it upon themselves to look at what does it mean to the children to be confined at home. Are they even going to stay at home? How is it going? How are we going to help them deal with this psychosocially? Currently in my country, students who are supposed to sit for their JC examinations were supposed to have been taught in 2018. And 2019, then they were supposed to have set for the final exams in 2020. But in 2018 and 19, there was a nationwide teacher strike when they were complaining and demanding salary increase. Then 2020, when things were settling, then there was COVID. But still, the very same students who did not receive adequate education from 2018 are expected to sit for their examinations, and no one is really speaking to them. Are they ready? Everyone is just looking at what the government is doing, what the government is saying, without giving the children their voices.
Thank you so much. That input is appreciated. There was need for us to go beyond just the closure of schools to ensure that we cover these issues. Psychosocial support, very, very important input right there. So let me get to Arethra Banda from Malawi. Arethra, as a child, I guess, who is in school, I think, would you share some of the experiences as regards the coverage by media, concerning COVID-19 and how you feel things could have been done better?
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to share this platform with you guys. First of all, I feel like COVID-19 brought a lot of effect to children, even if not all concentration was given to us. Everything which was happening in our country, for example, Malawi, the closure of schools, the strike of the teachers, and everything else was actually affecting the children and not. Yeah, of course it was affecting the elderly, but then everything was falling on the children, because if the parents are not going to work, they will not provide basic needs to the kids, which was making some of them to get married and all that. And the closure of schools caused a lot of problems. Like, there was a certain case for a certain girl who was from Mangochi. She chose getting married instead of going to school, because she said that she would rather get married than wait for something which she's not sure of. So this is what has been happening in Malawi, and it's like no one is giving much attention to that, because when the teachers strike, the attention which is being given is, should we give them the allowance they need, or should we not give them? But then I haven't seen any media talking to a child on their views about what is happening on COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of talking to children, but how was the coverage of all those issues you've mentioned? How was the coverage by the media?
What? Sorry?
You have mentioned quite a number of serious issues like child marriages and all those things. So how was the coverage by the media? Did they cover those things?
Of course they did. But then it was the normal coverage whereby they just report the case without actually looking deep into it, talking to the children and finding out why that was happening and all that. They just had to do it as in the surface covering and not going deep into the issue.
Okay, thank you so much, Arethra. Let's get to Stacy Achen from Uganda. Are you there? Just give us your perspective of how the media covered, issues to do with children in the wake of COVID-19 and how you feel they can improve. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Achen Stacy. I'm 14 years old. I'm from London College School of St. Lawrence. I'm an ambassador for Uganda's Little Hands Go Green and a child rights activist in Uganda. My views on the way the media has covered the children's rights during the COVID-19. I'm going to first mention the rights that children have. One, the children have a right to health, a right to education, and a right to protection. During COVID-19, the media has helped children in different ways. For example, the media has like on television stations in my country, we had lessons going on TV. So the media, so on the TV would take lessons on TV. That was during the early phase of the COVID-19. Then later on, we started using the internet to learn, and that helped us to finish some of the coverage of what we were doing at school. And then there were adverts on TV where they would tell us ways to prevent COVID-19 and the ways you could prevent it. The media also helped helped us in other different ways. In my country, the media helped us. I've already said they helped us with the syllabus coverage on TV and on the internet, because we got to learn through those different ways, and also helped us through the adverts they did on TV. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Stacy. Was that information or the access to the media, was it just by children from urban areas, where children from rural areas able to access those lessons?
Yes. Yeah, even children from rural areas could access the information, because the radios also they were airing lessons on the radios also, and also adverts on the radio. So even children from the rural areas could access that information.
Thank you so much. Let me get to Joshua, who is also from Uganda, just to give us, what they feel, the media should do to ensure that we do better, and what kind of stories they feel were good enough during this pandemic. Is Joshua there? Okay, if Joshua is not there, I'll pose the same questions to Mundia, just to give us impressions of, how the media has been advancing, children's rights during this pandemic, and what kind of stories stood out and how we can improve. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, firstly, I would love to outline that the media is very influential. Therefore, it's easy to spread information on a short notice. The media is able to educate people on matters concerning child rights and also report child rights abuse, as well as advance child rights. Furthermore, the media has involved children in media participation and made it possible for children to express themselves, as well as enhance child participation. Well, during this COVID-19 era, the media has played a major role by reporting on cases and also how children have been coping during this coronavirus pandemic. And we had series of press briefings from a child's perspective, and how we felt that, and how the COVID-19 pandemic had affected us, and how we would like to have a better perspective of how, maybe, let's say for example, when they said schools were going to be opened, so we had series of press briefings saying how is the government going to help us in terms of protection against the virus. So the media did a very good job in enhancing child rights, and they worked hand in hand with the government to make sure that children's rights are being considered. And examples of such rights include the right to education. We had the launch of the education channel, where we had lessons for starting from grade, let me just say almost all the grades, apart from maybe junior, or let me say like junior primary, like maybe 1 to 4, but we had most of the lessons aired on TV, and that really helped us. So the media had really done a great job in making sure that children's rights are being observed and put into consideration. And the story that stood out for me was the reopening of schools, but no, actually it was the opening of the closure of schools at first, because I thought if they close schools, then how are we going to learn? Is it the end of school? Are we stopping going to school or something? So that really impacted me in a negative way. But then when they said we're reopening schools after 6 months, I was like excited, but also worried as in how we're going to cope with the new normal, wearing the masks and sanitizing at any point. So these stories really impacted me in both the negative and the positive way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mundia. I'm happy that you are excited but worried when schools were opened. I remember in our days, if schools closed, we were always excited. But I'm happy that you have a kind of African children who get upset when schools close. But in my time when I was growing up, we used to be very happy if schools close. So that's a very good indicator that our future is very bright. So coming back to you, Sylvia, as a journalist, what are some of the challenges that you faced in covering children's stories during this season? What kind of bad effects or just the challenges generally on trying to get information from people? There's a pandemic, and so just tell us a bit about that.
Thank you, Henry. You know that we were under a total lockdown for a number of months. So the first stories that we wrote about the children or for the children were about the school closures. But we said little about, rather we didn't involve the children, because back then it was very impossible to talk to them, to find them, because they were locked in their homes. After some time, we realized we are leaving them behind. And at that point, we had a deliberate policy. We have a tool that we use to show the sources that we are going to talk to. And in this tool, we indicate the primary sources. And if a story is about the children, then they feature among the primary sources. But then it becomes a challenge because not so many of our journalists in this country have been trained on how to cover children's issues. I used to do a little bit of training about covering children, and we tell journalists, you do not go with your bossy approach because you are a journalist and therefore you go commanding and using that kind of language that threatens the children. Come to their level, talk to them as you imagine that you are a child yourself. Then also seeking informed consent from the parents, from the guardians, from whoever is in charge. We have seen so many stories that journalists will go without any informed consent from the adults and go ahead and interview the children. These children do not know where their voices are going to go and what impact this is going to have on them as individuals. Whatever they say, how is it going to affect them or affect their families? So we need to go prepared and be patient while seeking for interviews. I know we all want to have that story fast and break it and all that, but when we are covering children, we need to be a little bit more patient and walk at their pace. If the parent has not given me permission to talk to the child, should I go ahead and publish? We had a case of a journalist who went to interview a popular musician in Uganda, and the musician broke the journalist's phone. And we made a lot of noise about it because, we were listening to what the journalist is saying. But after an investigation, we established that when this journalist got to this home, she actually started taking pictures of the children. And the musician was asking, what do my children have to do with whatever I have done as an adult? If I granted you permission to come to my home to interview me as an adult, as a musician, as a politician, and all that, why should you take my children's pictures? So our journalists need to be prepared on how to cover stories for and about children. That was one of the challenges. And then the other challenge that I saw is that we have not done enough to protect these children. We bring their images and display them on our screens and all that. Yet, is it in the best interest of the child to have that image published the way it is? So it also goes back to training. What do journalists actually know that by doing this, are taking away the right of this child to privacy? Because they're entitled to it. Let's give it to them. I have seen that oftentimes we report about children as victims. There were stories actually that we haven't told, but I know that there are children who have learned a lot of skills during this lockdown. Yes, they were not attending classes, they were not used to the normal school days, but during the time they have spent at home, I know a child who has learned baking. And she's now baking, she's making cakes and selling them. It has an advantage and a disadvantage, but you can never go wrong with a skill. The disadvantage is that we have also had stories about children saying that I don't want to go back to school because now I have learned how to make money. But are we packaging this information in a way that informs other children that that is not the right decision for them to make at this time? You cannot drop out in P6 because you have learned how to bake and make a little something for your pocket, you know? So even when we are writing these stories, we need to package them in a better way that shows children that, yes, you can get this skill, but also continue with education. There were stories about girls that became pregnant. It became like the main story in Uganda, that so many girls were becoming pregnant. And I know that we interviewed so many people, including policymakers, including parents, including communities. I did not hear from these girls. That was also another challenge. Maybe we couldn't reach them. Maybe in trying to protect them, we avoided talking to them. So I thought that we fell short when it came to that. And then last week, I went to the northern part of Uganda. That is the part that had a conflict for almost 20 years. I visited one of the schools and I realized there were only girls in there. There were no boys. And I posed a question, where are the boys? The teacher thinks that they have gone into brick making, that they are on the streets making, doing business and doing so many other things. We also have spent a lot of time looking at the girl child who is becoming pregnant, and we have forgotten about the boys. So we are not focused on the interest of the child. It should be paramount in what we are doing, but we haven't focused at all on it. And we need to go back to the drawing board and see what is the interest of the child. What is it that we need to do to ensure that we have more voices from the children, for the children, by the children, and that in our programming, we package content for the children. Can we have more training? I know High Sound for Children has been doing some training for journalists who are covering, general issues. Sometimes it's very hard to get someone to focus on children's issues. But can we have such organizations deliberately train people who are going to focus on children's issues, children's rights, how to cover children, how to package their information so that it comes out to the public domain, well packaged and well received? Thank you, Henry.
Thank you so much for that input. Very, very important points coming out from there. We need to ensure that training is emphasized so that the media can be able to highlight those issues in the best interest of the child. Now, coming to you, Sarah, again, we had challenges of misinformation, fake news, And amid this, that kind of situation, how did you manage to impact society? How did your reporting ensure that those myths and misconceptions were kind of overwhelmed, overshadowed, so that people got the correct information? I know that was a big challenge. There was a lot of misinformation about the fact that COVID may not be there and all those things. So how do you rate the impact of your reporting vis-a-vis the misinformation, and how you managed to ensure that you gave the correct information, beyond what was trending on social media and other platforms?
Indeed, you're right. Most of the misinformation came through social media. And because there was a lockdown and people were not going to the office, even reaching government officials sometimes to demystify or to say whether something is true or not was taking too long. And so that was quite a challenge. Most of the time, then you had to do virtual interviews or just send text messages. And sometimes the information took too long to get back. But I think where we may have failed, either myself or even the rest of our colleagues, is that even as we did those stories, there was very little concentration on how are our stories impacting the young people? How are we protecting the young children? For example, when we just started the stories, here you would see burials being hurried. We would see people in those jumpsuits, the white jumpsuits, going to do the burials. But I don't remember seeing any of the stories on television warning that the pictures may be disturbing, because you'd imagine, because news is seen as a general exhibition kind of show. We usually don't have a parental advisory, but some of the stories that we were doing during that time, there was a lot of reports of deaths and all that. And I feel now, with the benefit of the hindsight, that maybe we should have considered our younger audiences, who, by the way, were exposed to television most of the time, because we still went to work, we still, continued with our lives, and we would leave them with all those gadgets, the televisions, the computers, because they were learning online. But we may not have made consideration as to whether the news that we were reporting was actually friendly to the children that we were also part of our audience during that time.
Thank you so much for that input. Of course, yes, I think there was need for us to ensure that sometimes we escalated the fears by showing certain images that represented negative narratives around COVID-19. Now, Relato,
I think also, sorry, Henry, I'll just interrupt. Henry, put on maybe even the way we did the stories. Remember, in the beginning, all presidents would have these briefings that would come. Maybe after a week, we had the health ministers doing daily briefings. I don't know if we took consideration also again for our younger people. It was, of course, something new for all of us, so we were learning on the go, but maybe there are lessons to draw in the next, if we ever have something like this again, small shows in between the main shows, where we try to bring in people who are, child psychologists or more child-friendly journalists or experts who can then demystify what is happening around the country for the younger, audiences and for the younger population. I've seen a paper, now this is away from broadcasting, there's one newspaper here called the Daily Nation. Now on page 2 of the newspaper, it has started a column where young people send in their views. And it's interesting, most of what they're sending has centered around COVID-19, meaning we cannot continue to imagine that the young people that are our audiences have no opinions. They indeed have opinions. And if you track for the several weeks that the nation has been publishing that, there has been children who have been, contributing. There's never a day that they said, today we are not going to have a column because there was no young person with an opinion.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that input. Yes, Rarato, I was saying, I guess I got your name right now.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Great. Yeah. Yes. So, just your reflections on the media. You highlighted some of the challenges, I think, in the beginning about how limited the coverage was. So, what could be your ideas in terms of what the media can do differently? What can we learn from this and ensure that we do a better job? What recommendations or suggestions would you have, for the media to do something different?
Like the previous speakers have highlighted that there's a need for training to assist journalists package sellable stories that are child or children centered for editors to actually buy and publish. We have to remember that the media is also a business, and mostly news stories that are prioritized are those that are going to help a media entity to make money. And usually children's issues are always pushed right at the back of the newspapers or at the right, they are not prioritized. So there is need for training so that journalists themselves can think outside the box when they go and cover children's related issues and protection of rights and so on. I think Stacey highlighted that there were a lot of children-related stories, mostly girls, but the very same girls were not involved in the reporting. It was just on the basis. That is what we see as a norm. Children's issues would be reported on, but it will be on the basis, not a lot of in-depth that happens. So I guess more on training, and the training should also not be focused on journalists because editors make decisions. So if they too do not understand the importance of putting children at the center of everything else that happens, then it does not matter how many times journalists are trained. If editors are not incorporated, most children-based stories will always be sidelined and replaced with political sensations. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for that input. Of course, there's need for us to ensure that we do sellable stories. And, I've been thinking about how we see a lot of adverts showing chocolates or sweets, biscuits, targeting children in our media. But we think that stories, we can't add stories to that, because when we are advertising sweets and biscuits, we are basically targeting children with the view that they are watching. So yeah, I think children, if we maybe package our information very well, they can equally be consumers of our media spaces. So thank you so much for that input. Yeah. So back to the children, I'll go back to Arethra from from Malawi. Sorry. Yeah. So what do you remember stories that stood out for you? During all this period, what kind of stories do you think you remember to say this story gave me hope, or this story was very positive or negative? So what kind of stories stood out for you, during this pandemic?
The story stood out for me was the same as the one for Mundia, the closure of schools. By that time when the schools were closing, I was about to write my national exams, and it was very frustrating because I felt like I'm never gonna write the exams because it was like remaining with 2 months to write the exams, and then they told us to close the schools, which gave stress a lot of people, including me. And then when they opened the schools, it was actually a good thing because I had hope that I'm finishing my secondary school and go on with my education because everything stopped, and the beginning of schools again brought hope to everybody else. So that's the story stood out for me.
Great. Yeah. No, yeah, you are very right. In fact, in Zambia, there was a debate about whether we should reopen or not. And we got, I think there was a date which was set. Then the president announced that they are going to postpone. And we noticed that a lot of learners were very disappointed And I'm happy that you guys are excited about learning, not just to pass exams, but to ensure that you develop skills that can change the narrative on the continent. So let me go to Uganda again, to Stacy. What stories stood out for you? Just the same question, responding to the same question. Stacy, I wonder whether Stacy is still with us.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, the story that stood out for me in our country, Uganda, there is a television station called NBS. It's the leading television station in Uganda. NBS asked children to send messages to their fellow children about COVID-19. They even asked like these, for example, there's a child superstar called Fresh Kid. Fresh Kid sent out messages to other kids um through the through the television station and even radio. He sent messages in a local language to other kids about ways we can prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Wonderful. That was a very great innovation. I think it's something that other media houses from other countries can learn from. Thanks very much for sharing that. Mundia, what kind of stories stood out for you as far as COVID-19 coverage is concerned in Zambia?
So as I mentioned earlier, the part about the education really, really stood out for me. And then also the launch of the education channel, I feel it really helped most of us. So that really excited me and it gave me hope that, okay, since they're now introducing the education channel, so there's hope for a better future. And then also there's this meeting I had with the Minister of Broadcasting and Information Services, Miss Honorable Dora Celia. Okay, so we had like a meeting and she was talking about how we as children, we were about 3 children there, and she just wanted to get a perspective of how we feel that they could help us in terms of curbing the coronavirus pandemic as well as help us as we were under lockdown. So I feel that was really a great step because those are just small steps in enhancing child participation. So I feel it really, really helped me and stood out during the coronavirus pandemic because they were able to like get a perspective of how we want to see things in future. So we talked about how they should also involve children in the rural areas and how they could cover up for them and also involve them in enhancing child rights participation. So those are just the stories that stood out for me and gave me hope that okay, there's a better future ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mundia. Of course, I don't know whether it's humility. You are failing to mention that you actually got covered by various media houses during that meeting with the minister, which was very good because at least children's voices were heard. Now, as we commemorate the International Children's Day of Broadcasting on Sunday with the theme Ending Violence Against Children Through Media, just each one of us, I'll start with the children now. How do you interpret that theme, ending violence against children through media? How are we interpreting that theme in the face of COVID-19 and making sure that, the media plays its part? And also, I want you to reflect on the effectiveness of the participation in the International Children's Day of Broadcasting. Sometimes it's the adult that write all the scripts, they write all the news. Children just go there as parrots to read what the adults have written. Is that what is happening in other countries? How can we improve to ensure that children are the ones who are actually getting the stories out there and bringing out information for the public to consume? I'll start with you, Mundia.
Thank you so much. So the theme for this year's ICTV is very interesting. I mean, because firstly, media is very influential in terms of dissemination of information, and using the media to end child violence is really a major step because it's really going to impact and help a lot of children in terms of reporting on, let's say, child abuse in other stories. So I feel it's a really great step and it's a really exciting and interesting theme. So furthermore, I feel that ICDB should be done more than just once because we as children face a lot of, let me say, problems. We face a lot of problems and would like to talk about them on many occasions. It shouldn't just be once in a while, twice a year or thrice. I feel we should have more platforms to talk about issues that influence us, affect us as children through the media because it's very influential. And I also feel that it's really somehow not international children's day broadcasting because yeah, as you said, Uncle Henry, you said the scripts are written for us, but I feel if they ask us, if the people who are in charge of writing the scripts could ask us what we as children want to reflect or rather talk about on this day, it's really going to help us because rather than them giving us a speech or a script and present, we also have like our own perspectives and we would like to see things differently. So if they could only like give us a chance and find out what we really want as children to talk about and express through the media, it would really impact us in a very positive way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mundia. Let's get to Stacy. The same question, your understanding of the theme for ICDB and how you feel participation can be enhanced other than just children speaking as parrots, but getting involved more in the preparations. Thank you.
Yes, I think I'm going to agree with Mondea about the part where kids should be given a chance to write for themselves and write about their problems and the problems that they are facing instead of them being given scripts to read. Instead, they should write for themselves. And I also think kids should get more involved in their in speaking out their problems and speaking up for their rights on various occasions. Recently, in my country, we had the International Day for the Girl Child. We held a press conference where we outlined some of the problems girls are facing in Uganda and the ways we can solve them and reach out to the government. So I think this way children, if children speak for themselves instead of the adults speaking for them, children better express themselves when they talk about it themselves instead of the adults talking for them. Yes, this is what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Arethra, I guess you got the question. What are your reflections on that? The International Children's Day Broadcasting, talking about ending violence against children through media and how you feel children should participate effectively in that. Let's get to you, Arethra.
Okay, the theme is very interesting, and I think it will be very influential for children. And according to the media, I feel like it's very good for children to be more involved to the media because, as somebody said earlier, that the media has the power to give power. So if we're allowed to speak out, not actually speaking as such, but then if we're allowed to be involved in the media, we can be creative, which can help us to express ourselves in different ways. Because not everybody can be open to talk. Others can be able to express themselves through maybe writing, drawings, singing, and all others. So I think through the media, children can be helped so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arethra, for that input. Let's get to Relato. What are your reflections on the theme and how you feel children can participate effectively?
Thank you very much, Henry. I'm actually jotting down as they're writing, as they're talking.
Writing the story.
No. Just learning from what they're saying.
Great.
There's a thin line between involving children in helping tell their stories and actually being mindful of protecting them and their rights. they want to be involved. They want to be involved in the decision making. They want to be involved in content creation. But we also have to be mindful that as an elder, it is my responsibility to protect the child's right. It is my responsibility to think beyond the hype of whatever the story might be. So it is very easy to not be mindful of rights and protection of a child if we're talking of something positive, a child meeting a minister. That's something beautiful. Therefore, there's not really much needed, much consent from parents that is needed because it's a celebration. But what about when there's a story that involves violence? There's a story that touches on the mental health of a child. Then how then do we bridge that gap that I am as a person I identify? There's a thin line. So I guess we have to find an amicable environment to say this is how we can actually work together with the children, for the children, by the children, in assistance with the media. Also, I like the theme. It says ending violence against children. Throughout the years, the boy child has been left behind. So I guess this year's theme is very interesting. It's bridging the gap between the boy child and the girl child being protected. So I guess I'm very interested in that. And but where I am is we need to find an amicable environment where we can be able to cover both positives and negatives, not on the same level because they're not the same, but being able to use the same standards, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that input. And I think we could be adopting that cliche for the children, by the children, with the children. I guess that's something that we could be able to adopt. I've seen a message from Sarah that she has rushed for a live report. So I'll go straight.
Your time is running out.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Sylvia, can you please conclude by just highlighting your views in a short time concerning the theme?
Thank you so much, Henry, once again. Sorry, you got an interruption with power, African problems, you'll understand. So I was off for a few minutes. However, I'm back. You want me to summarize the discussion? Sorry, I think I even...
No, I was talking about International Children's Day Broadcasting. The theme is ending violence against children through media. And I also hinted about the participation of children where they're just given scripts to read like parrots instead of, like involving them in terms of preparation and all those things. Just in a minute, what are your views on that?
Okay. Very interesting because you realize that sometimes we have contributed. Sorry, I'm speaking because I have seen this with my eyes. Sometimes I'm watching TV at home and I'm like, oh my God, by doing this, we are contributing to violence towards the children. But we need to reflect and see that as the media, we give children hope. We package information in a way that will not treat them as victims, that will show the parents, the communities, that children have rights which we have to uphold. Because if the parents know the rights of the children, if the community knows the rights of the children, then you'll find that they will be cautious and avoid violating children's rights. If we become the ambassadors of hope for the children, we make them part of our programming, we make them part of our production, we make them one of our key sources in whatever we do, I believe that we shall be contributing to a brighter future for the children. There's something that disturbs me so many times. I see parents who take pictures of their children and share on social media. They take pictures of the report card, and share it on social media. You also share the contact of the teacher, the school where the child goes, and the route that the child follows when they are going to school. What are you doing? You're exposing your child. Even the enemy who wants to attack you knows how and where to find this child. And you're contributing to the violence against your child. So we start with ourselves as human beings, as parents, as relatives, as aunties to these young people, and ensure that whatever we do, their interest is upheld. Their interest is what we start with.
Mundia, for your input. This was a very important discussion. Let me hand over to Aditya and Mundia for them to conclude this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Henry, and all the panelists. It has been a captivating discussion. It's 2 minutes past 5 in Uganda, and that's slightly 2 minutes past the time that this discussion is supposed to close. I would like to invite Felistas from the CSO Forum to give closing remarks. Thank you so much. Felistas, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for the meeting, and I must say that we've had fruitful discussions. It was interesting to really listen to children that spoke about the articles that interested them, as well as the meetings that they have attended. Surely, if we were to provide the spaces as this one for children to really engage, and for children to talk to each other, and for children to really speak to us as programmers, as service providers, and as advocacy organizations. We will surely get there if we are to ensure that children can participate in matters affect them. I want to also thank the organizers of the forum. Thank you, the moderator of the day, for having steered the conversations. I particularly liked how you were engaging with children, and how questions in terms of the tone and in terms of focus were changing when you're engaging with journalists and when we are asking children for their views. That is a skill that we need to recognize, but also need to facilitate discussions such as this one, particularly discussions that have a mixed panel of those that have more experience and those that are coming into the space and are giving fresh views and fresh thoughts around what it is that we need to do. Surely we can't do this alone, and we need all stakeholders to really take part and play their part in ensuring that we can do this collectively. And to you children, thank you so much for stepping in and speaking on behalf of African children. We really did enjoy listening to yourselves. You are very articulate, and you are very much in touch with what is happening around you, and that in itself will help other children to really come to the fore. We wish that you can also play this part in terms of mentoring others that are coming to learn how to be self-confident and how to command the discussion in terms of the issues that you know. From the CSO forum, we are taking the lessons that we are getting from this forum, and we will be engaging with some of the discussions at the upcoming 18th CSO forum. We have a whole session around how can we use technology to still have impact as civil society organizations, but more than that, to make sure that as civil society organizations, our mandate or our services are sustained despite the challenges of COVID-19 and all other issues that come with this COVID-19, access to services, but also, you know, how governments are responding to COVID and how these have affected our funding as civil society organizations, services to our constituents. So thank you so much for having started this discussion. It's opening that discussion we'll be having during the 18th CSO forum, and we hope that these are lessons that we can also pass on to the committee I'm glad to have seen that we did have Honorable Sadiqa with us. We thank you, Madam, for having been part of this, and thank you, all panelists. Panelists, can we see those stories, please? Make clippings that we can also enjoy, and do the video clips that we can also play in terms of the discussions that took place here. Once again, thank you everyone, and thank you participants who were part of this, and to the interpreters. I never thank you enough, but thank you for facilitating access to information and ensuring that everybody is on board in terms of understanding what the language that they speak. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Felicitas. Those are powerful words. I'm trying to connect my charger. My battery is running out of the laptop. But I can hand over to Mundi. Mundi, where are you, my dear?
I'm here. I just want to pass my humble thanks to everyone who took their time to participate in this, because we all have things to do. We would have been doing other things, more productive things, but this is more important. And I'm really grateful and thankful to everyone that attended and passed in their remarks and how they just view ICDB. I'm really grateful. And please keep up the passion for children, because we as children are the future, and you have to teach us the morals and ways that we're about to go so we can grow in a very cultured and principled way. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not adding anything, just to thank all of you for attending from the start to the end. It doesn't happen every day, especially for the media. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.